Welcome to The Authority File, the podcast where you'll hear conversations with academic librarians, technologists, researchers, and authors whose work is laying the foundation for higher education's future. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice. If you're new to The Authority File, you can listen to and find previous episodes on all of the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and on our website, choice360.org. There has been an increasing amount of activity around making the scholarly monograph open access, a significant challenge for a variety of reasons, especially in the social sciences and humanities. Nevertheless, there are a number of projects underway, and one of those is from MIT Press, which dramatically enhanced its open access initiatives last year when, with support from the Arcadia Fund, it launched Direct to Open, a unique program that aims for long-term sustainability. It relies on a collective action model funded through participation fees that opens new titles from the press and allows term access to its backlist. Beyond that, the model is specifically designed to be adopted, adapted, and scaled by other university presses. We first spoke with the press back in March 2021 when Direct to Open launched. For a great primer on how the program was conceived, we invite you to listen to episodes 182 through 185. Here, we are joined once again by Emily Farrell, Library Partnerships and Sales Lead at MIT Press. We're also welcoming Curtis Brundy, Associate University Librarian at Iowa State University. And in this series, brought to you with support from MIT Press, Emily and Curtis update us on Direct to Open's progress and what they've learned along the way. In the second of 4 episodes, we look more closely at the buy side of the equation, how pricing is tiered according to institution types, the lengthy and deliberative process of buying into open access, and how a commitment to OA can cause ripple effects throughout the institution. So you've mentioned that larger institutions get the higher pricing tier, and you found that smaller institutions were a little bit harder to onboard. Why do you think that is, regarding the smaller institutions?
I think there are a few things. It also goes back to time and money. I think budget can be challenging. In particular, I think that staff time is difficult, particularly now where a lot of institutions did lose staff during the pandemic. So really simply finding the time to assess models takes longer. I think also visibility is more challenging. We are used to working with larger research institutions and having those direct connections. We also only have a certain amount of human capacity in our team as well to reach people and have direct conversations. The best ways that we've been able to amplify our message has been through consortia, and where we've seen more success is bringing on smaller institutions through consortia relationships where licensing is centralized, invoicing is centralized, and that labor doesn't then fall onto the smaller institution to manage where they don't have the capacity to do it. So, I think those are the main challenges.
Okay. You mentioned that it takes time. There's a time element here that can be challenging for some institutions. What do you suppose? I mean, I guess what I'm looking for is what goes into that assessment on the institutional side, and what are you learning from your institutional partners as they go through that process?
I think that we did hope to make sure that our model was easy to understand. And I do think that in most cases where we've had conversations with different types of libraries, that the feedback is that it is indeed reasonably easy to understand. Mm-hmm. So that's positive. But then I think, sometimes then that is the model's being reviewed by a scholarly communications team. It then needs to be taken to collection development where those two pieces are separate inside a library. Maybe it needs to be taken to a faculty board. So I think that the workflows and processes for approving open access models, I think, can be more burdensome, and Curtis is a much better place to talk about it. Yep. In terms of what that structure looks like inside a library. But I think that can be some of it because it's still new, because it does to some degree challenge traditional collection development approaches and how money is allocated, that can just create more of a time burden. What's been interesting to see is that over the last year, 2 years, it does seem that more libraries are developing specific guidelines for assessing open access models, particularly where they want to assess how equitable a model might be, how impactful it might be for their faculty. And those guidelines, I think, are helpful for us and for the library as well, though it can also add to the time where it takes more time to go through that assessment process. So I think those are a few things.
Right. Yeah. And Curtis, I know you've got some things to say here. So what's your take on this? Could it be there's quite a lot of OA investment opportunities in the market as it is, so maybe there's some time involved in sifting through those as well?
Sure, I would agree
Yeah.
with that, and I'd agree with everything that Emily said. It's for libraries, this is actually something that is new. If you
Mhm.
think about where we were just 3-4 years ago, I don't think there was a university press open access model out there that a library could even invest in. I mean, there were some. I'm thinking of like maybe Punctum books or some things like that. There could be a couple smaller things, but so it's
The
new. So
Tome
library,
initiative,
yeah,
sorry to jump in,
no,
but the Tome initiative was there, but that was a bit of a
yeah, which
different
is
approach.
completely a different model, which is, that would not have involved, I think, like smaller libraries at all. It would have been the ones that are actually publishing the monographs. So it is new, and as with anything new, I think there's a sense in the libraries that they need a little bit of due diligence into these before they invest in them. And but what ends up happening with that though is then I think what we're doing is we're scrutinizing to a higher extent things that really should be fast tracked and a no brainer for libraries, but because they're new, we're taking them through criteria check sheets and having our Skull.com group look at them. And some of this, I think, comes down to libraries that have it in their head that, if you think back to like the 2.5% initiative or whatever it was, the paper that David Lewis wrote several years ago, like there's this idea that this open spending should be some, fraction of overall spend, when in reality, what we need to do is transition the whole collection spend to support for open, right? And so I think as libraries do more of this, becomes normalized, they get familiar with the models. I think it will speed up. The reality right now is that there are actually not a lot of investments out there for a library like mine that's sitting here with our thinking about our end of year one-time spending. It's really hard to find anything open to invest in the market. We're already participating in the few university presses that are actually have an open model. Most university presses are not even thinking about, for good reasons, as Emily explained with the back file. The back file is a very important part of the direct open model. And so they don't have an investment right now to open up that back file.
Mhm.
So I actually think we're like in a desert of open investments right now, and we're just starting to see like the first little blossoms coming through the dry dirt. And we really want to turn that whole thing into a, this is a terrible metaphor, but let's turn it into a wildflower meadow. And we're not there yet, and it is new. But I think it's exciting for libraries, and I think there's still work to be done, like this podcast, just bringing people along in their understanding of both what they are and also the why, why it should
Mm.
matter to them, why they should be thinking about investing in this way.
Right. So that's great, Curtis. And kind of following on that, what are the opportunities that these OA models, OA monograph models, like to open? What are the opportunities for change within the institution that these might influence?
Yeah, what I think about with that is that, the mindset of librarians working in collections for a long time has probably been more of like a procurement mindset.
Mm.
We were buying a lot of the same things year after year. I mean, not the same book necessarily, but if we averaged buying 20 to 30 print books from MIT Press or whatever it would be, we would do that year after year. Somebody would just select them, we'd get invoiced, and we'd pay for them. And that was the nature of what we did. what I think what's really happening now is that libraries are shifting from more of a procurement approach to collection spending to really an open investment in this open transformation that's happening in scholarly publishing. And so, what do you see at the library level and at the institution level? Well, Emily already mentioned, like a lot of libraries are coming up with, new open principles to guide this type of spending. I just posted on Twitter today, like we just finished an update, not an update, but a complete rewrite of our collection policy. Like we've been sitting on a collection policy like most research libraries that probably hasn't been touched in 20 years.
Hmm.
If it has been touched, it's just to update links and to maybe add in, new people, to who's responsible for it. But for the most part, those collection policies have been static for a really, really long time. Having an offer like direct to open come across the bow of your collection librarians really makes them rethink what they're doing and how they're doing it. And it prompts those critical conversations about, how do we bring these things that we say we care about, openness, equity, how do we bring those into the decision making process on how we spend these huge chunks of money that are entrusted to us by our institutions? And part of that is, aligning scholarly communications with collections. We've tended to keep those on opposite sides of the building. But it's also with our diversity, equity, and inclusion work, bringing those values into alignment with how we're spending our budget. So to me, what this does, bringing an offer like this to a library is it prompts in a really important way these conversations that we should have been having in our libraries, 5+ years ago. But thankfully, we're having them now.
Excellent. So now you've both mentioned the sort of connection, whether it's formal or a connection out of necessity at certain occasions between scholarly communication and collections. Emily, we'll start with you. Can you just help me understand what is that connection there that needs to happen or should happen in this context? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Curtis captured it a moment ago, just in that really there's been sort of the purchasing kind of perspective. All right, collection development is about amassing sort of a collection that is for your institution and your, the people that work at your institution only. It's very much a perspective inherited from the print legacy. And I think that, a lot of the people and the librarians that are working within a more scholarly communications framework are really, focused on a more integrative approach and a more, I guess, contemporary thinking about, well, what is it really to sort of live out the mission of a university in the distribution and sharing of knowledge, and that it's not just about, of course, it is about your university community, and that's core, but it does go beyond that, and that there is a way to. I mean, it's an exciting opportunity to think beyond the boundaries of what it is that you have within your own institution and who it is you're serving in as an institution that's creating knowledge, and for libraries in the role of getting that knowledge into people's hands. And I think that's how it sort of comes back to university publishers in particular, but publishing more broadly, that we also have the same mission, the same drive to sort of get that information into more hands. And that's where I think that partnership there and bringing the sort of the framework and thought from scholarly communication together with collections is incredibly important.
Yep. Curtis, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think Emily really said it well. I do think there's progress here. I think it's more common to have, like my position title is Associate University Librarian of Scholarly Communications and Collections. So the dean that hired me 5 years ago was, none of this was on the ground, but she envisioned it in my position, someone who would have a foot in both of these worlds, who could try and help bring them together. And I think we're seeing more of that. And, and the importance of this, back to what Emily said about, like, it used to be about, what are you providing to your own institution, what's within your own building, and we measured the value of research libraries by their holdings, right?
Right.
But coming out of the pandemic and the lessons learned there around how important it is if we want to accelerate knowledge production, if we want to speed up science, like this content needs to be open around the world to the folks
Mm.
who can use it and solve public health problems in the face of a crisis like COVID-19. So to me, I think these are accumulating and progress is really accelerating. And again, I mean, it does. I've been in this position for 5 years, and it's been a drastic change, not just in local practice, but how this is all playing out across the world with publishers, with funders, with library consortia. Things are really on the move toward open right now.
Excellent.
Yeah, and just to jump in to sort of to say from the publisher perspective too, I think that not only the public health crisis, the pandemic, but also just what we've been seeing with misinformation and fake sources. Really, libraries and publishers working together are some of the best placed people to try to fight back against this and to better inform people, to provide this sort of access. And I think that's also a really pressing need, and why open work, open data, open research broadly is just so vital. And to have people that know about these infrastructures, that understand how knowledge is shared and used, there's ways that we can help find solutions to these problems.
You just heard from Emily Farrell, Library Partnerships and Sales Lead at MIT Press, and Curtis Brundy, Associate University Librarian at Iowa State University. This 4-part series is brought to you with support from MIT Press. Join us next week when we discuss the potential of direct-to-open to be adapted by other university presses.
Sadly, I think we across the university presses, as I'm starting to understand the landscape, is you have presses that are stable and viable, and they have an attitude, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So there's that excludes some people of wanting to move. And then you have some that are, maybe more, it's a precarious existence for them, and the risk of a bad decision could be existential. And so there needs to be some way to encourage them and maybe it is like an aggregator approach where there's safety in numbers. So there is some cushion for any particular press if they were not to meet their threshold in one year or another. There's got to be a way to get around this. And I think there's growing interest in libraries, more of a more demonstration of the examples that we can actually move these folks to. So I think we'll see more, and that the sooner the better, as far as I'm concerned.
As always, sponsorship and advertising for the Authority File podcast are handled by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced and edited by Choice's digital media producer, Sabrina Kofer. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.